Sakura Garbode, and welcome to Cass's Cafe. And I'm here with Firaxa, our first time member, Firaxa. And we're going to be covering and reviewing Jedi Survivor. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and talk to us why you like Star Wars, maybe what your first introduction to Star Wars was.
Hi, I'm Firaxa. The more keen Star Wars fans out there might recognize the name.
Yeah.
But I first got introduced in Star Wars when I was very young, just watching the original trilogy and whatnot. I wasn't really into it back then. I was too young to really understand it. But my first time of really loving anything about Star Wars was probably when I played the original Star Wars Battlefront. Not the EA Battlefront, but the original Battlefront.
Yeah.
Way back when that first came out, I was in a mall with my dad and we were walking around. He was like, pick out a game. And I'm like, okay. And I just literally picked this game out, not knowing what it was, right? And I still have those discs. It came in 3 discs. I still have them. It's my most prized possession. I'm never getting rid of it. I'm never selling it. I'm going to put it in a glass case and seal it away.
Same.
But that game introduced me to gaming, first-person shooters in general, outside of Medal of Honor. It was the first time I really got into Star Wars and enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the Empire, driving the AT-ATs, the Starfighter pilots, being able to fly those ships around and then being terrible at it back then. So much fun. But then as time went on, I was more of a gamer than really a movie watcher. So I played a lot of the Star Wars games.
Yeah.
There was a lot of games that I didn't play. I hadn't played a lot of the games from on the Super Nintendo and whatnot. I played a little bit of Shadow of the Empire back when I was really young. That was on the N64.
Yeah, I haven't touched that one.
That's a fun one. Kind of hard. Back then, they didn't hold your hand in video games like they do now. They were tough games. So I enjoyed. Yeah. That was another one way back when. Recently, I've been playing a lot of I played all the newer Battlefronts. We're a little disappointed in them. Yeah. I'm playing, obviously, the Star Wars Jedi games. But I really enjoy the MMO aspect of Star Wars The Old Republic. I have a legendary account. I've completed every single story. I'm completely caught up on the story in that game. I've done everything in that game.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and take that segue and start talking about Jedi Survivor. And by the way, if anyone has recognized this, yes, Firaxa is Captain's brother.
So one thing I want to start off with was there was a kind of in the beginning, obviously we played on PC. So there was a bit of technical issues here and there. Getting past that, I really enjoyed the beginning of the game to a point, but I thought it dragged on a little bit. The Coruscant part is in itself, it felt like I was just okay, I get it. We're trying to get on this ship. Let me get on the ship.
I felt like that was a problem with a lot of the game where it's it takes you forever to get through all of the crazy platforming to get to your destination, and you got to backtrack and go around all sorts of different areas and through the same areas a few times, and I'm can we just get to the point here? I really felt that in Jeddah more than anything else. It
was a big problem in Jeddah. It was also a big problem on one of the later planets that you have to go through.
There wasn't many.
No, not the later planets. It was the space station, sorry.
Yeah, the moon.
The moon base. The moon base, you were doing a lot of circular going back and forth on that. And you went back to that, I think, 2 or 3 times. And that was a small map. If you look at the map, it was small. But you went back and forth through it a lot. Going back to Coruscant, it was interesting because, you get to the end of the Coruscant, right? And then first off, I saw people dying already, right? Outside of Bode, I saw none of these other people in the trailers. I know we're going to be meeting up with Marin and whatnot later because obviously they were in the trailers and they're the main characters. They're all dying.
I feel you. When we were given that little plot twist that the guys that were turning him in were actually his whole team, I was like, oh, these guys aren't long for this world.
I think they were scared to commit to doing stuff on the game and going full in. When you have certain elements in place that are not then used later, you kind of have to structure the game in a way to where you can't use those earlier assets. Like you're never. They have this companion system, right?
Yeah.
Well, why is it that whenever we get off of Coruscant, we can't go back to Coruscant until we get Marin? That was a red flag right from the beginning. I was just like, wait, what do you mean, Marin? Bode's been with me this entire time, and he's the one who helped me traverse this area. What do you mean?
Huh.
Like, that was a huge red flag. And then the other red flag was in I call it like the mobile game inclusion, like that game where you get to scan the different characters.
Oh, yeah.
And you use them to fight each other in that holo table. That was like basically the mobile game Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes.
I had such a fun time with that, though.
It was fun, but I was just like, this is just Galaxy of Heroes. Anyway, moving on from that, you could play everybody in your crew except for Bode. And I'm just like, why? That is just a red flag. You're literally telling me that he's going to betray me. Like, you should have hints that he's going to betray you, but not from game mechanic standpoints.
Yeah.
And when a game where you have New Game Plus as an option right from the game release, why shouldn't Bode be something that you can't fight in that game mode to get something?
Yeah, for sure.
And in a game where you're like, oh yeah, just go back into New Game Plus. You'll even get more stuff in New Game Plus. It's like, you can still 100% the game with your same character in a sense. So why not have him as a character that you just have to do before a certain point in time?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the game was rushed.
Oh yeah.
Definitely not. I feel like it was probably going to be this big, more grand game that Respawn wanted to do, and then they just got pushed to, put it out. That's evidenced by like the game bugs and the performance issues and whatnot.
Yeah. And among other things, just in the game, like I think we've mentioned, we were talking about it before, the planet map, like the galaxy map, it felt super empty. And even though you could like go and manipulate the whole galaxy map, there's just empty spots, empty sectors.
And not only that, like, the planets aren't even spread out on the galaxy map. They're all in this one chunk on the side. So it's like, it's not like, oh, you had them like all over the place and you could, that's why the map is so big. No, it's like you're all on the top left part of the screen of this part of the galaxy, and that's just where you stay. And also, considering that, why is no Inquisitors coming after us? We got the one Inquisitor that was apparently not dead from the first game, the Ninth Sister, who we just show up and we wreck.
Yeah.
And then no more Inquisitors for the rest of the game.
I know.
Also, I did enjoy the one sequence where Cal jumped up on the transport and used the Force to manipulate the controls. Like, that was a really cool callback to the first game when that happened to Cal.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was a really cool, like, it kind of showed him having, like, more mastery of the Force and whatnot.
Yeah, and learning from his enemies.
Yeah, which was kind of a foreshadowing if you think about it. Like, this is... Because one thing is, this game just kind of dived in. Like, this game doesn't explain things story-wise, and I hope they explain things in the next one because they obviously are going to have a third one.
Yeah, there's a few like one-liners when you're walking around with Bode that kind of explain like the history with the crew, but it feels like there is a lot to be desired.
Like, I think what they should have had is you should have had at least one full planet. Not Coruscant. Coruscant doesn't count. It's a prologue. A full planet with this crew. Make it so that you get used to them. Make it so you, flesh out a little bit more. And then kill them off. Maybe like one by one, not all at once.
It also kind of touches on that subject of the companion system where we could have, another character with us for a little while and we can tell them to like attack people and help us out with bosses or whatever. And then that element is barely ever used except for main story stuff. Like,
and when it is used, it's not very helpful.
Yeah. It's like, I wish I could like take Marin out on just a romp through the planet for a little bit and fight things with her or whatever, but you can't do that.
I feel like they wanted to, honestly. I feel like they wanted to do more with it because you could have so much more interactions with lore-wise or conversations by having you and a companion going out and doing things, and depending on who you pick, kind of like Coder. Outside of certain missions where you needed to have a certain character, you could pick whoever you wanted to come with you on your missions.
Yeah. To be fair to this game, though, that's something that the first game didn't have, was any kind of companion system. They all were basically in cutscenes or on your ship in the first game. So having them
True.
out and kind of fighting with you a little bit is a step up, but I feel like they had a lot more potential with it than they gave us.
That's kind of like the whole feeling I have is like so much potential was in this game that it's still a good game, but you see so much potential of what it could have been.
Yeah.
And like that kind of hurts it.
And when the game like this comes out, it's like, man, it's really good. And I wouldn't mind DLC, but at this point, I just think they should just focus on the next game.
It kind of depends on like what kind of DLC we get. If we get a DLC that has like a lot of stuff in it, I'll probably get it. Like at least 1 to 2 planets per DLC. That are, and not small planets. Like I'm not talking like like if they're like the size of Coruscant, that's a ripoff. But if it's like the size of like Jeddah,
yeah,
you know, like I would probably say that's probably decent DLC, depending on what we get.
Yeah, it depends on how much it is too. Like I would pay maybe $10 for a full planet, but if it's like 20 to 30, that's half a game price for one planet. I'm like, nah.
I mean, you could easily have DLC. You know, talking about the end of the game here. You know, going out finding people of the Order to bring them back to what was the name of that planet?
Tanalorr.
Yeah. Find people from the hidden path. You know they're out there. We have the codes to find them. Let's go find them. You know, that's easy DLC right there. That doesn't really go into the next game too much or whatever it's going to be.
Before we get into the story aspects of stuff, what is there any last comments about like technical stuff you want to talk about, or
why is it that we can't paint the mantis?
That's great. Yeah.
Well, that was in the first game. We could paint the mantis like almost from the get-go. Like as soon as we got in, it was like, oh hey, nice ship, Grease. I want to paint it black. You can't. We have the mantis at the beginning of this game. Grease isn't even on board. Why can't we paint it?
Yeah, it's like even the first game had a pre-order or deluxe edition something special content that was a special mantis color, but this one, you know, it's gone.
Why? Like you could have easily put it in when Grease fixes the ship too. Been like, oh, he fixed the ship. Now you can paint it. That would have been perfect. No, nothing. It's like, why?
I do want to ask, how was the gameplay, like the technical aspects? Like, did you find any glitches? Did you experience any bugs? Because I honestly didn't really.
As a person who has played a lot of games like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, obviously that's what these games are kind of taking from. With it's very Souls-like, which isn't a problem. Like it's a very good combat system. The only problem is they're taking that, but they're not using it properly. And I'm going to give you an example. All right, so you have 4 stormtroopers lined up on a ledge. You can't get to them at the moment. You can force pull them down if you got a force power ability, easy. But you also have 2 melees trying to come at you. Let's say they're purge troopers, right? They're using unblockables. You have to dodge.
Yeah.
What can you not do when you're dodging? Block. What are the stormtroopers on the ledge doing? Shooting you. What is the problem here? You cannot do anything about that. You're going to get hit. That was my biggest problem. Other games like Dark Souls, even Assassin's Creed, had ways to deal with this where it was like either smarter AI where they wouldn't do that at the same time. And you know, it's kind of cliche where it's like, oh, you're fighting a melee, they're not going to shoot at you as much. But that's to make sure that it wasn't necessarily unfair against you to like cheap away at your health. Like there was a lot of cheap shots that would happen on your character because of how the enemies were set up. And I'm just like, okay, kill me, hit me with a difficult enemy like Spawn of Ugabu. I killed that guy. It took me 4 hours on my difficulty, but I got him. All right. And like, I'm not going to complain about that guy because I was kind of a joke boss, but I got him. All right. It was one guy with a bunch of terrible movesets, but I got him. Why is he easier than going up against 4 stormtroopers on a ledge and 2 purge troopers?
At least the stormtroopers shooting at you at the same time as purge troopers trying to attack you is lore accurate.
I mean, it's lore accurate, but it's annoying. And like, this is something I've seen across other people talking about the game. It's just like, it's not fun. It's one thing to have that happen like at a higher difficulty. I wasn't playing on the highest difficulty. I was playing on Jedi Knight. Or the middle difficulty. That was a good combo of difficulty, but still like if I would get given a challenge by certain enemies. Like there were some enemies out there that I would just floor, but then there were others that would just, all that they would do is just unblockables. It's like, okay, stop it. That's annoying because you have to dodge those. It's not like you can do a certain thing to bait out a non-blockable. You just have to wait until they go, okay, I'm done doing unblockables, now I can do something. Or you have to use, a force ability to hit them from afar. But even that doesn't do something all the time. They'll just keep going through it. And I feel like that's a mistake on the system where you have this entire kit, which is the force kit.
Yeah. But
you can barely use it properly. A good example is in boss fights. Half of your entire kit is this force kit, and 90% of the time it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the enemies, especially late game, just negate a lot of your force powers.
It's kind of like for my Dark Souls fans out there, if you play a magic build, right, and you go into a boss fight, and the boss fight just goes, nah, I don't care about magic, you're screwed, right? That's kind of what it feels like if you go in here and you put most of your points, thankfully I did, into like force powers. You would be going into some of these boss fights like, oh great, I have like 2 combos to use and they don't do anything to this boss. Like the force powers don't do anything to bosses. They don't do anything to certain enemies until you upgrade them all the way, which is something I figured out later. Like Burst Troopers and Dark Troopers and certain high level raiders, you couldn't force push or force pull at all unless you had the highest level upgraded of those abilities, which was fun. And that's a cool, thing. But it's like, how are these guys able to resist a force pull, force push?
Another aspect of that, I think I've mentioned this before to you as well, where I was having issues with, oh my gosh, I can't it takes too long for my character to do what I tell it to do. Like I'm dodging, but then it won't attack right away, and it won't block right away or whatever. And I just felt like the controls were laggy or something. And then I found out there's actually a setting that you can make button mashing succeed. And I turned it on, and it was so much of a smoother combat system.
It was like they were trying to punish you for hitting a button fast, which is interesting because I have a high reaction time. This is one of the reasons why I love playing video games, is because I have a high reaction time. I can get to jump on people. I can do those flicks and whatnot in first-person shooters. So I was having troubles where I'm just like, okay, dodge, hit, attack. And then I would notice that the enemy would then do something to counter me because of that. And I'm like, that should not be a thing.
Yeah.
An enemy should not counter what I'm doing just because I'm doing something well.
Mm-hmm.
I should be able to wreck them because I know their attack patterns, because I know what I'm doing, not because the game thinks I'm button mashing.
Yeah. After I turned that setting on, it wasn't perfect. It's not where my reaction time, my button mashing, or as you would call it, was what I'd like it to be, but it was definitely better than with it off. Because with it off, I would be spamming the X after dodging until it would finally start attacking. But with the button mashing thing, after I hit B to dodge, I could hit X almost pretty much immediately, and then he'd go into an attack. But it's still not as quick as I'd like it, but it's definitely a lot smoother.
The combat wasn't as fluid. One thing that I did, I used in my first playthrough, I used the double-bladed stance and the dual-wield stance. Those are the stances that I used, and I upgraded. When I upgraded the dual-wield stance to higher levels to where I could use a slower attack, or a pace-out attack, where you would literally hit X on the Xbox controller, you'd wait half a second, you'd hit X again, and then you just keep doing that, and then it would do a combo that did a lot of damage. That combo would wreck anyone if you could get it to start going off, including bosses. And I feel like the reason it was is because they are trying to make you go slower in your combat for whatever reason.
It's be a little bit more methodical, I guess.
They want you to be methodical, but at the same time, they also want you to have this insanely quick reaction time, because some of the parrying that you have to do is insane.
Yeah, especially on the hardest difficulty, you have to do it frame accurate, frame perfect.
Which I don't mind on the harder difficulties, but again, I played on the middle difficulty, and if there is an unblockable attack and I have to hit the B button immediately to dodge, that's a little punishing. Yeah. Especially if they do it over and over and over, and you almost have to predict it. At the same time, I'm not allowed to hit my X button right after I dodge to punish the enemy.
Yeah.
It's like you have these two conflicting philosophies about combat clashing, and then you have to find this weird middle ground in order to do really well. And that middle ground for me that I found was using that lightsaber technique where I had to just use the one combo. And that got a little boring because it was the only combo that I could do against bosses that was effective. And so literally I would go into these late game bosses against Bode, against not Darth Vader because I wasn't Cal at Darth Vader fight, Dark Trooper bosses, these Wampa bosses, whatnot. They weren't called Wampas, they were something else, but let's be real, they were Wampas with brown fur.
Yeah, that was weird.
These combos were the best way to deal with any sort of boss because it was like the weird middle ground. But because of that, I had all these other combos that I unlocked that I just never used because they just weren't good. The one other combo that I could use a lot was on the other stance, which was my double layer stance, where I called it the sheave jump, where you literally jump forward and you spin your blade.
Yeah, I like that one.
That one was good a lot of the time, but it required a force power. So like if you were out of force, then you were just kind of ruined.
Yeah.
So I had to then build off of that by having like, okay, if I block, I get force power back, or if I do this, I get force power back. Like I had to literally put into like another skill tree to make that better.
Yeah.
Which was weird because I'm like, this is not like, why does this require force meter? They had your force meter be like an action meter. They should be separate things if they for certain attacks.
Yeah.
If I'm not using the force, why is my force going down?
Yeah. No, that's fair. I always, most of those combos, especially for, I think the Claymore and the double-bladed were force-based combos. I'm like, how can I do this?
If they want to go down this road, they're gonna like, it's like they want to be like Elden Ring and Dark Souls. But you know what those games have that this game doesn't have? Stats. Okay, if I want to be able to do this stuff, you know what I can do in those games? I can put my stats into stamina so I can keep doing this stuff. I can't do that in this game. I have to literally pick a stance that has the most action bar.
Yeah.
Actually, no. That's only the defense bar. Will only change. Your force power, you would have to literally go out there and you have to find all the collectibles that increases your force powers. You have to put all your skills into the force power. And even then, it's not a lot because after it goes back down to a certain point, it doesn't recharge anymore. Yeah. Why? I've been trying to not compare this game to Force Unleashed because it's a completely different game and it does everything beautifully. But the Force Unleashed had it right. It recharged all the way up. Now, I'm not saying it should recharge that fast because it recharged super fast in Force Unleashed, but that point of that game was using the Force. More so than your lightsaber. In this game, it's obviously about using your lightsaber, but you shouldn't have it be where in the fight, you're like, once you use your force power, you're kind of ruined.
Yeah.
Especially in the early game. So, for example, if you haven't done New Game Plus, and the first New Game Plus changes all the enemy types.
Well, if you use that.
Which I did because it was fun. Yeah. The first fight that you do when you go up against the stormtroopers is so much harder because they're all shield baton stormtroopers.
You waste a force pull on one of those and you're screwed.
And that's what I did. I used a force pull on one of them, and then like 4 more jumped down, and I'm like, oh, this is great. So like I'm literally running around, force pushing them off the ledge, and then I run out of force power, and I'm just like, well, this is fantastic, But like that's a great concept of like that's how this game is built. It's like this game is built to have more customization on how you play, but then restricts how you can play.
It's weird.
In game development, there are different teams that will take care of different things. You will have animation teams, you will have graphic teams, you will have story teams. You will have different teams. Now, I'm not sure if there was different teams that were doing different combats, but if darn feels like it was, because it's like you had an entirely different team doing the enemies and an entirely different team doing the combat, and they would just clash, and I was just like, what is this?
Almost an entirely different team for each of the disciplines.
Exactly, yeah. Like, and since you can't really change your stance mid-fight, like outside of the two, if you go into a fight unprepared, you're screwed.
Yeah.
At least in the first game, you could use all of your stances at once. Like, granted, you only had like 2, but like you had abilities to where like your lightsaber would break apart and you would do something, and it was good for this character. Like it worked better because you had access to everything at one time.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that we could only use 2 out of the 5 stances, I'm like, oh, that's not good.
And just a little bit of a clarification, a little late, I guess, into this discussion, but we're not ones to like claim that games are hard. Like, we'll get good. We'll try our best.
Like I said, I've played Dark Souls. I played Elden Ring. Those are the epitome of the games of get good scrub.
Yeah. Like, we're not whining and crying about the game being hard. We're just like, this combat system is a little chunky.
I've seen YouTubers out there who complained about the combat system because they kept getting wrecked by certain bosses, and then I'm watching like, it's because you're not playing it right. There is a certain mechanic, it's called parrying, and they never did it. Parrying is your friend in this game.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the one thing that saves your life all the time. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is why I hate the unblockables, because you can't parry unblockables. It takes away your one lifeline.
Yeah.
These people, like, just holding block in this game is stupid. It's not going to get you anywhere. It is like, they're just going to wear your defense meter down, and then you're not going to be able to do anything. There are so many bosses or enemies out there that would hit you 3 or 4 times in a row. You can parry each one of those hits, and every time you parry one of those hits, their defense meter goes down, not yours.
That's what I was having issues with before I turned that button mashing on, because I wouldn't get the parries off sequentially fast enough, because it just wouldn't register. But when you turn that setting on, it's, like I said, it's much smoother. You can do it a little bit faster. I'm kind of coming from the first game where it was ingrained in me to parry everything. So I automatically would parry everything in this game. And when I wouldn't get parries off or quick enough sequential parries, I'm like, what in the world? This game is not as fluid as the first one is. Until, I found that setting.
I never really had a problem with parrying. When I figured out how to parry correctly, I was fine. The only fight that I really had trouble parrying, and that was just because it was so hard to see his attacks, was the freaking the Gendai.
Oh, yeah.
What was his name?
Ravis.
Because he had a really cool fight, by the way. I loved his fight, but it was really hard to tell when to parry because of how his attacks were coded.
I'm excited to get into the story and lore discussion of this game because there's some issues with that.
Now, I'm also kind of disappointed because I'm pretty sure he shouldn't be dead if I'm up to date on my Gendai lore.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, when we get into the lore aspect stuff, he chops his head off. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Dirge survived Obi-Wan Kenobi just blowing him up. So,
and I was like, I don't think that's how you kill. Like, don't you have to completely incinerate them to kill them?
Pretty much. I like Chucky.
And I'm just like, he ain't dead, bro.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about Jedi in this time period. I think it's a good place to start off. We're a terrorist Jedi that is well known.
Yeah.
Why the heck are we being hunted more?
I know, right? I guess it's a little explained when we find out that Bode is a double agent, but even then, he's got his own problems with the Empire. So he's almost a double agent that just is fighting for himself, but is working the systems to his advantage. So I feel like maybe he's probably keeping the Inquisitors off their backs somehow.
Let's say that's the case. Why did Ninth Sister show up?
Why did the Ninth Sister show up? Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Maybe because they're on Coruscant? I don't know. That's
what I'm talking about. Like, no matter which way you look at it, it makes no sense. If he was keeping the Inquisitors off the back, why did Ninth Sister show up?
Yeah.
And if Ninth Sister showed up because he's still being hunted, why wasn't he being hunted for the rest of the game?
Yeah, there's no really good explanation for that.
We have the Purge Troopers that are everywhere, and they're technically hunting Jedi as well, but they kind of just felt like they're patrolling in places, not necessarily that they're actually hunting.
Yeah, aren't the Purge Troopers supposed to be alongside Inquisitors and meant to be fighting Jedi and stuff?
Yes, if you read up the lore on Purge Troopers, they're literally trained to fight Jedi.
Yeah. But they're just kind of stationed out in the middle of nowhere for no good reason, it seems.
When they find you, they go, "Oh, a Jedi! I've been waiting for you." It's not like, "Oh, you're finally here." It's like, "Oh, look, a Jedi!" It's like they're not actively looking for you; they're surprised to see you. And I'm just like, so they're obviously not hunting for you. And if they are, that's just a bad, writing from the writing team.
And for the most part of the game, you're not even fighting Imperials. You're fighting like pirates and junk, and
which I honestly didn't mind. I love seeing the battle droids back.
Yeah.
I actually thought that was a really good, because if you're just fighting one thing all the time, it can get kind of boring.
Yeah.
So I think it was a really smart idea to actually bring in the battle droids, and as time went on, we fought different kinds. Like, at first we were only fighting the B1s, and then we see supers, and then we see commandos, and eventually we see droidicas, which are, oh my god.
Yeah.
But one last thing I swear about combat: why can't I force push the droidicas?
I never had any problems with droidicas. You just go in there and slash them up, and they'll die.
Like, because okay, Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which I know you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
But in all this different kinds of media, you see them just being able to just push the droidica, and they automatically go into roller form, and they go off a cliff. Why can't I do that?
Why didn't they do that in Phantom Menace? The lore's inconsistent.
So yeah, we have the Raiders, which are interesting in the Gendai. One thing I want to touch on is the dark side usage that is almost never talked about. So a lot of people have been talking about how slowing enemies is technically a dark side power. And we have that from the beginning. I'm not sure if that is actually true or not. I know you have more lore insight than I do because you read a lot more books and whatnot. Is, from your experience, a slowing of an enemy or environment considered dark side or leaning to dark side?
We had similar powers, like the stasis power in Coder, that is used by both. So I think it's not necessarily light or dark, it's just how you use it. Because I don't think it was strictly dark side power in Coder, the stasis. But
okay.
It's a similar thing, but even that's even worse because you're freezing somebody instead of just slowing them down. So yeah, I think it's fine. It's whatever. It's when he uses it in a darker way in the latter part of the game that's obviously like a dark side thing, because it's not just slowing him down or slowing the enemies down, but it's also like giving him more power in his anger, and he's like just mowing through them more than the normal slow is.
So yeah, so when we embrace the dark side for the first time, we're up on the spy space station, right? Yeah. We just confronted Bode. That's basically like kind of like the first time we kind of like invoke the rage in a sense. Cool aspect is if you are pausing throughout that storyline, you will actually see your background go from blue to red. I thought that was a cool detail. I will praise them on that. That was kind of like a hint of like what's going on with your character, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Interesting. No, I didn't catch that.
So yeah, like in the beginning of the game, like your background is blue. At the end, it's red.
Huh. Maybe Cal is slowly falling to the dark side.
Which is kind of what's showing here. And we had this entire storyline with Marion where she said, if you go to the dark side, I'll pull you back. Cool. That makes sense. He got tempted by the dark side. He went into it. Marion pulled him out of it at the end of that space station. Cool. The moment we leave and I hit that button again, it still goes dark side. I'm like, what the heck did we just not talk about? Okay, why am I still here? And then fast forward to the end of the game, and then it says embrace the darkness. All right, story time. Here is how my fight with Bode went. And this is accurate to this conversation. Trust me about lore, okay? We get into this fight, right? I'm fighting Bode, and I've got this entire conversation in the back of my head of going, hey, don't go into the dark side. If you do, we'll bring you back, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, we're fighting Bode and whatnot. And, I get to a certain fight. I think it's like my first time getting to this part of the fight. And I'm doing good. And it goes, okay, he's slamming on me, he's punching me in the ground, he smacks me the away. I'm like, oh, how dare you? But it was kind of funny, and punching me, and it goes, embrace the dark side. And I go, no. And I'm just like, I'm not going to play that. Okay, now, for the record, I love playing dark side characters. The first character I ever completed in Star Wars: The Old Republic was the Sith side, all right? Yeah. I love playing Sith side, all right? But I'm like, Cal ain't Sith. He is a light side Jedi. I am not going to have him go down this path. So I don't click it. Yeah, guess what happens?
False sense of choice.
Because you know what happened? I died. Okay, I freaking died, and I respawned, and I went, "Excuse me, you're telling me I have to go into the dark side here? Okay, go back into the fight, wreck Bode some more, get back to that cutscene, click the button, and I go dark side." And I'm like, "Okay,
I paused and I sat there for a minute going, what the heck is this game right now? You're telling me I have to go dark side? Okay, you know what? Maybe it's fine. Marin is here. Maybe Marin is going to talk me out of it at some point. Fast forward to the end of the fight. Guess what never happens? Marin, nothing is brought up about it at all. And I'm going, what the heck? Okay, we're going to gloss over this?
Yeah, you're actually left there like, man, if I didn't follow the dark side, I wouldn't have won. You know?
Yeah, and I'm just like, what are we saying? Like, first off, what are we saying here? Two, what are the implications of this? Is there no repercussions of me going dark side? Which we clearly established earlier was a problem.
Yeah.
And we're not gonna talk about it.
It didn't pay off very well. And it gave you that false sense, like I said, of you had a choice. And I didn't have your experience because I just want to get this over with. Because it was like my 4th or 5th time on Bode, and I just was like, all right, give me in dark side, I'm ready. so I didn't have that same experience, but yeah, it's like you are made to do that, and it's not paid off. Like they don't explain why, or if he's actually gonna follow dark side. It's all seems at the end everything's hunky dory, you know. Him and Marion are a thing. They now have a kid, and
adopt a kid, but yeah,
yeah, and they just get to, you know, no repercussions, nothing like that, you know, is influencing him supposedly, and now everything's fine.
Now,
so, yeah,
by the way,
weird.
I went around into the bar afterwards and I talked to everybody, and it didn't get brought up there either. Okay, it's just left. Like they just don't even touch it. And part of me wonders if there was supposed to be something after that had to be cut due to, you know, time constraints from the developers or whatnot. Because it just feels like a really weird thing to just not talk about. That they build up so much to the point where it's literally you are dying on the screen and you don't see anything. It says embrace the dark side, and you're like, okay, and you gotta click it, and you have to click it as I now know because I died when I didn't. And nothing talks about it. Not even a remark from anybody. Not even from the kid. Not even from Bode. Nobody. Like, not even Bode calls you out on it. All right?
So, for the most of this discussion, it's all been fairly negative things. Is there anything, but even though we say it's a good game, so what are some of the things that you really liked or we really liked about the game?
I'm glad that they had more it was a longer game than the first game. It was longer. Not by much, but it was. And I liked the open world aspect. I liked the ability to customize my lightsaber more.
Yeah, lightsaber customization is really good in this game.
You know, by the way, if you didn't know, apparently you can customize the angle of your crossguard. I didn't know that.
Wait,
until
what?
Not a lot of people know about that. That came across my YouTube at one point. Person's like, oh yeah, you can adjust a crossguard angle, and I'm like, freaking news to me.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I liked all the customization, the lightsaber, the pistol, the BD one, your customization. I really wish it was easier to find and unlock the different cow customizations, because I really want the big luscious beard, but I have yet to find the big luscious beard. So I'm running around with a small beard, short beard, and a bun. So
oh gosh.
Yeah, I went man bun on it.
My problem is, like, sometimes you'll find a outfit and it doesn't have colors, and you have to find the outfit again in a different box to unlock the colors.
Oh,
like,
wow.
I have these pants that I really love, but they're only in one color because I have yet to find the other box that has the colors in them.
That's so weird. Why do they do that?
I don't know, because sometimes you unlock something and straight away you get all the colors, and then sometimes you don't. It's like they were trying to fill all these boxes I placed everywhere and realized they didn't have enough stuff to put in them, so they were like, yeah, let's just split up some of the colors. And you're like,
just
why?
Why not just take the box out? You know?
Yeah, you know.
This is weird.
You don't have to have a box at the bottom of every freaking lake. You can just take some of those out. You know, if anything, that would make it better, because it's like, okay, not every time I go down the lake is something there. By having something in every single crevice, I think is actually worse than having not something in every single crevice, because you know something's going to be there. You're like, oh, there's going to be another box around the corner. Oh, look, there it is. You know, oh, there's a body of water. There's going to be a box at the bottom of it.
I would have. I mean, I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm just saying if I were to do it a little differently, I would probably just replace those redundant boxes with, more priorite and have more of that stuff unlockable in the stores rather than having to find it out in the overworld.
Going back to trying to be positive, I do think the customization was good. I do liked how we could customize everything more. I do like Mantis. I like the direction they're trying to go with the combat. I think making it so that I can use the stances that I love to use in other games, like being able to fully use dual wielding and being able to fully use the blade is cool. I just think they need to make them better.
Yeah, I really
better combat.
I really liked the diversity in stances.
I did like being able to pick and choose how I wanted to do the story in a sense by okay, I've got story I gotta go. I'm gonna go do some exploration now. There was so many times when I just went and just did exploration and I found stuff I was trying to find stim canisters. So by the end of the game, I had 10 stim canisters.
Nice.
Which made that boat fight a walk in the park because I had so much health. And you would find, different perks and whatnot. I'm not sure how many perks you have found. I have 5. And I was looking for them everywhere. And maybe I just couldn't find them.
I think I bought some as well, but I think I have 6, maybe 7.
I wasn't buying them because I was saving up to buy the perk slot, which is 10 pieces, which very hard to find for me for some reason. I do like the cantina aspect. I love being able to go back and finding different people and bringing them back. And that kind of reminded of Assassin's Creed 3, where you would go out and kind of build up your settlement and whatnot. I actually really enjoyed that. That was really cool. I liked I liked the side quests. They're which they labeled as rumors. It's interesting. Just call it is. Just call it a side quest. It's not a rumor. Being able to go do different things. You would actually have different people that tell you different things. You had the bounty hunter who would literally tell you, "Oh, go kill these bounty hunters over here" and whatnot. You would have the Twilight that would tell you where these meditation chambers were, or these puzzle chambers. You would have different people that would do different things. I didn't do a lot with the upstairs garden because I just didn't really care for it.
I didn't even realize how to find or collect the seeds. I just randomly found some here and there, but I didn't understand it until I was starting to play my New Game Plus, and I was like, oh, the seeds have these floating green
they're fireflies around
firefly things around them. Yeah, so that's how I found out. So I'm out looking for those now because I want a full garden. But you can't even get a full garden until you find that alien thing on
Jeddah. Also, how did they get up there?
I don't know, man. But yeah, I enjoyed the whole hub world kind of thing.
I enjoyed the puzzle force stuff where you would find this little
force terrors.
The force terrors were fun.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed the puzzle terrors where they would literally send you into a parkour puzzle.
Huh.
Those were fun too.
Well, yeah, I think that's what I mean. I think they're the force terrors. I only found one in Kobo.
So there's a couple around. There's one in Kobo that literally spawns on top of the tower after the ivy spawns for the garden. There's another one that spawns next to Doma in her shop. And so there's a couple different ones out there. There's one where you have to fight 200 battle droids. That was kind of fun. There's another one where you have to find 2 frogs. There's another one where you have to fight stormtroopers. There's another one where you have to do parkouring and whatnot. They're different and they're fun and they give you stuff. And I think that's really cool. It's kind of like the challenges that you got in the first game, where after the game came out, they implemented these meditation chamber challenges, where you would go in and meditate and you could select a challenge and try to complete it. Except these actually gave you reason to do them because they would give you awards and whatnot. So I thought that was a really good idea. I wish we had a bit more hot stuff that would happen after the story completed. I did enjoy the fact that Bode has his own force echoes everywhere after we kill him.
Oh, really?
Yes, they're everywhere.
Oh, nice.
And they will there's 1 or 2 in the cantina. There's a couple spread around Jeddah where he's kind of like talking to himself and whatnot. It's really cool. It's
Maybe
really
that's
cool.
what threw me off, because I talked to you this before we recorded as well, that I was listening. I wasn't watching, but I was listening to Star Wars series stream where he was going around doing all the bounty hunter stuff, and it was after he'd beaten the game. And I thought I heard Bode, talking to the Mantis crew or whatever. And so I didn't expect Bode to not be in the game after we beat it. So it was a surprise to me that we actually ended up killing him.
It was probably a Force echo of Bode talking.
Yeah, that's probably what it was, because that makes more sense now.
Yeah, like,
wow.
They did have a lot there. Like, I did enjoy the level design for the most part. The ones that didn't fall back on each other, so I was like 4 times in a row. The map design, or like the holo map design, was so much better than the first game. You could actually read it and understand it.
Yeah. My favorite part of the entire story was when we got to jump through the Night Sister gates with Marin for the first time. That was just so epic. That was the most epic part of that whole game.
Yeah, so like the game was good, but it had so much potential to it that I feel like was missed due to timelines. And I don't blame Respawn for any of this. Respawn is one of my favorite developers out there. Like, as you're listening to this, please don't think that I hate Respawn. I do not. Respawn is actually one of my most favorite developers out there. Titanfall is like my favorite first-person shooter ever. Yeah. Technically a different team, but they're still under Respawn. I love Respawn. I just know that EA likes to push things out the door before they're done. And I'm pretty sure that's just what happened here. So I really hope Respawn is able to, iron out the kinks of the game, make it, obviously get like the graphical glitches, performance issues done and out and ironed out, and hopefully get some either free DLC or some paid DLC that wraps some more things up and talks about some lore and whatnot issues that we've discussed here. Wrap some things up before the next game comes out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I really hope that next game is just that much bigger and has that much more stuff going on and much better combat. Like, we have technically an improvement of combat in this game from the last one, but it's like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of a deal. Yeah. So I hope it just gets that much more refined in the next one.
Yeah. So, segueing off of that, we can go ahead and start wrapping this up. What is your opinion overall on the story of this game, maybe compared to the first one, or just in general in Star Wars?
I would say the story was good. There was a few interesting things that kind of pulled me out a little bit. Seeing Cordova pop up out of nowhere, it's kind of jarring. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just like, aren't you dead?
Yeah.
But they never technically said he was dead in the first one, so I guess it was kind of like, it was heavily implied that he was dead in the first one, but apparently not. And so when he showed up, I saw him dying. Believe it or not, he died. It's like, oh no, thing I knew was going to happen. But Bode betraying me was kind of foreseen, but not quite. Like, I wasn't sure how he was going to do it. Didn't see him being a Jedi.
Yeah.
Kind of have an issue with him not being able to be sensed by other Jedi. That never got really explained. I feel like that should have been explained more, because the only other person that was happening was Sheev. And he's like this really big, powerful dark side user, so like, kind of makes sense. But this is just some random Jedi.
Yeah. I had the most problems with this game's story than I did like anything else having to do with the game. Like, I enjoyed playing the game. I enjoyed the platforming. For the most part, other than like the repetitiveness of some of it, I enjoyed the combat system, especially after I figured out the setting to turn on. And I just, the worlds were okay. I had a little bit of an issue with the world design, because I felt like Kobo and Tanalorr were very similar. And like, I was expecting Tanalorr to be much more grand and beautiful and different. But
now, to be fair, they are very close to each other. I can kind of overlook that, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, but when it comes to the story, I had more problems. One, it's most of it following this High Republic arc thing that I just found was lacking. Kind of weird that this guy was held in Bacta stasis for 200 years rather than like carbonite or something. And like the whole Bode thing, I was like, he's doing this for his daughter. He's obviously got some good left in him. He doesn't seem to be fully evil, but yet he just is stubborn, too stubborn, and portrayed to be like an irredeemable. And I'm like, there's no, like, I felt all through this time, even after he killed Cordova, like, he can be redeemed. Like, I was expecting him to come back into the fold somehow. And I was kind of let down that we did have to kill him. And then my biggest problem was the fight with Vader. It was cool, it was fun. Maybe from the first game, I could see Seer giving him a little bit more of a fight, but it's still not as much as she gave him in this game. And him having to like brace himself and limp off the scene after killing her was just kind of character assassination, in my opinion, of Vader. And he should have just handed it to her more, because it's Vader, you know? If it was any other character like an Inquisitor or something instead of Vader, then I wouldn't have had a problem with that. But it being Vader, it's a little weird.
I feel like that was supposed to be an Inquisitor originally, but I think that should have been the Grand Inquisitor, personally.
Yeah, or they had to have like Vader come in because, you know,
they probably had. It was, in my opinion, it was probably something they had to put Vader in last minute because they wanted, like, EA probably wanted Vader in the game. Yeah. You know, be like, oh look, Vader's here, and then so they did that.
Yeah, I agree with you though that it probably should have been. I would have liked it more if it was the Grand Inquisitor and he limped off, like, because he survives. We know he survives, but he could have more damage done to him than Vader does. But other than that, I can't think of anything too crazy.
I think we should end this with rating the game.
Yeah, that's what we usually do at the end of our reviews.
Gameplay, solid 6.5.
Yeah.
Like just that potential and like the things that they did to the game, I just feel like kind of hurt it a little too much. Again, it was really good. It was better than the first game, but like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You know, so probably 6.5 to a 7 for me for the gameplay. Story-wise, probably a solid 7.5. Felt rushed. Too many questions left open at the end that weren't answered.
For a long game, it felt rushed.
There was so many questions that I did not have answered that I feel like should have been answered. So, like, overall, I feel like the game's about a 7. Not a bad game. It's a good game. I just feel like there could have been a whole lot more to it.
Yeah. I'm gonna go a little opposite. I'm gonna like do a little switcheroo. So I think gameplay is around a 7.5, and the story is a 6.
Okay.
And then overall, probably a 7. So we're gonna kind of stay in the same boat there. But yeah, I have way more. Like I said, I had way more problems with the story than I did the gameplay. And I felt like this story was lackluster in comparison to the first game. I really liked the first game's story a lot better. It was more grounded, in my opinion. You were introduced to your first crew throughout the game organically, and all fit, and we had more planets to go to, and they're all really different. And I just think the first game was way more solid, and this game just felt like it needed more.
Yeah, to me, it felt like the game was just not as complete as it should have been before release.
Yeah.
I would not recommend this game for $70. I think once it goes down to either 60 or 50, probably give it a shot, depending on how you feel about the game after this review. And, you know, obviously, it's your money, you do what you want, and I'm not going to say don't buy it. If you feel like it's worth $70, you know, obviously we bought it for $70.
Yeah, we both pre-ordered it.
You know, I don't really regret it, but I don't feel like it was really worth $70. Yeah. So we will see. We'll see what happens. I say I'm keeping an eye on the game for the news, seeing what they'll do with it. Obviously, they're working on just getting the game to work right now.
Yeah. Thank you, Firaxa, for joining us today. And I hope you guys enjoyed our discussion. Please like and subscribe and leave us a comment what you guys think about the game, how it played for you, if you like the story, and all that kind of stuff. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.